Hello, everybody. My name is Reinaldo Rodriguez. I am a candidate master from Venezuela. And today we are going to analyze another video for the series title player versus club player. In this case, my opponent is a club player in the theory because really in the practice, is a very strong opponent. Her name is Rose. It's a regular training part for me. I have like 2 years more or less playing regular games with her. I started to play with her when she had 9 years old, and now she is 11 years old. So I still remember our first game. She defeated me. So from the start, I learned have a lot of respect for her in all the sense as a chess player for sure. In this game, I'm going to show you a game that I play this weekend. I use the King's Indian attack. I was playing with white pieces. I did this because I have a student, okay, regards to Rene, from Netherlands, that he liked to play the King's Indian attack. This is a student that in one of the previous videos of the same series, he managed to defeat FIDE Master in a simul game. I decided to play the King's Indian attack. This is a schematic way to play against Rose that usually she likes to play Queen's Gambit decline setups against more or less everything. Okay, so let's start with the game. Knight f3, d5, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and now c6. Okay, looking at this structure, she started to create some opposition. The situation is pretty flexible because Black can play like inverted London system with the bishop out of the pawn chain. Also, she can play like with knight bd7 and e5 as happens in the game, or also knight bd7 and e6 to kick semi-Slav schemes. So, castle, knight bd7, and this is probably the first important moment of the game where I have to take a decision about allow the advance of the pawn to e5 or not. In the game, I did d3. Really, d4 is quite logical to control the knight and to prevent e5. But after this, the position is going to transpose to a Catalan setup after e6 and c4. So, in order to kick the game in the King's Indian attack territory, I did d3, preparing the advance e4. So e5, knight bd2, preparing e4, bishop d6. During the game here, I start to be a bit worried about the pawn advance to e4. Okay, really, this is a well-known position, but sometimes, even despite know the position during the game, you may start to think about some ideas that probably we usually don't pay too much attention. And thinking about that during the game, okay, it's really perfect, playable, and interesting, especially if in some case Vlad can try to do a kind of pawn sacrifice on e3. Black have to play with a pawn of disadvantage, but this position in a practical point of view can be very difficult for white to coordinate the pieces. Okay, but she did something more. I still remember that during the game, she started to think during some few minutes here. Probably, I am very sure that she was considering that alternative, but later she decides to continue in the regular way. And now after e4, she took on e4. Here, I was expecting a short castle. I have a previous game with her where here I decide to open the center with d4 immediately, what really no is the best way to continue. I decided to do this in order to try to open the center, thinking that I have the bishop in the fianchetto location. But really, this variant leads to a lot of liquidations in the center, and the position is going to be very balanced. No is really a good way to proceed in order to think in kick the opening advantage. But in the game, she decides to capture. And here, okay, first important decision, capture with the pawn or with the knight, with the less value pieces used to be the best, especially thinking that the pawn on d5 was controlling the c4 square. Maybe the capture with the pawn Here I can consider later the knight jump to try to get this square, or probably the knight can come to e3 looking for the outputs. But to do everything this, I have to reinforce the central pawn, and also the knight on d2 is blocking the diagonal for the data square division. For that reason, I decide to recapture with the knight to open the diagonal and looking for a way to develop the pieces in a more quickly way. So knight takes, pawn takes, the bishop on d6 is hanging. Okay, and now after knight f6, enabling a space for the line, protecting the bishop on d6 with a discovered defense. Everybody talks about discovered attack, nobody about discovered defense, but this is also possible, like in this case. And now I have to find a way to continue the development. First of all, with this move, black is threatening the pawn on e4 that is unprotected. And now a move like rook e1 looks very natural, but really the rook will be there in a closed file. A more natural location will be on d1. So in order to start middle game plans, because despite I don't have the rook connected, I decide to play knight h4, looking for the outputs. Because in this setup, after the trade of the pawns in the center of the board, the central pawn is fixed, and this is something very bad for the bishop in the fianchetto location. So the plan about look the outputs is looking for a possible transformation of the pawn recapturing with the e4 pawn to open the diagonal for the fianchetto bishop. It's more, this is a multitasking move, defending and looking for the output. So now short castle, and here the knight jump to f5 probably will be the more consistent way to continue. Okay, but at the same time, sometimes it's good to kick some flexibility. Here, this is possible and perfect playable, and probably the more consistent way to continue. But in other hand, this kind of position, give to black a majority and more central control, because now black is the unique one with central pawn. So this position is pretty balanced, but for sure a dynamic balance. So let's go back. Okay, here I decide to play h3 in order to try to complete development, avoiding that the bishop can be chased by the knight. So bishop e6, normal developed move. Black is connecting the rooks, well, the major pieces really. And now here queen f3. Okay, here the same idea, knight f5 is still possible, and now considering that after g4 this will be a strong pawn chain. But one more time, the queen move to f3 start to create a lot of tactical resource, because after all, the name of this opening is the King's Indian attack, so really make a lot of sense try to accumulate pieces in this flank to create some attacking possibilities. The queen on f3 renew the intersection point on f5 for all the pieces, and also why have the possibility to recapture on f5 with the queen instead of the pawn. That variant, despite the bishop is going to be blocked, why always preserve some chance to play h4 and relocate the bishop in this diagonal. For that reason, win the bishop pair is something that makes a lot of sense, because in the other variant where white take the outputs, let's say something like this, without the pawn on e4, eventually black in some case can try to push this pawn in order to remove the central pawn and be able to activate the data square bishop. So for that reason, probably delayed the occupation of the outputs is something more is a more flexible way to continue. So queen f3. Now, okay, queen c7, and finally knight f5, keeping the chance to recapture with the queen, winning the bishop pair, but probably the most important, keeping the central pawn on e5, because with my pawn on e4, black won't be able to push the pawn, enabling diagonals for her data square bishop. Okay, so here in this position, I start to feel very comfortable, and for the next move, okay, my opponent, the little Rose, she spent like more or less like 8 minutes, I think, in the next move, what usually tells you that your opponent don't feel quite good about the actual situation. In this moment, I start to think and evaluate an amazing tactical possibility. Because a typical exercise that you can do in the practice when you are attacking is try to imagine that will be your turn again. Okay, and in order to exemplify what I am trying to say, I'm going to lose a tempo with black with a useless move. For example, in case of a5, white can play here uh, knight takes on g7, and after king takes, bishop a6 check. In case of queen takes, king h5, and bishop mate. I have this variant on mind during the game, but also I start to consider after the check the possibility to move the king to g6. This would be a clever option because now no is possible for white capture the knight, and really capture the rook doesn't work because black is going to have two minor pieces for the rook. Here, the way to continue with the attack is queen e3 to be able to get the invasion square on g5, and this is a more or less unstoppable checkmate here incoming. So I have this variant on mind, and I was wondering to see, the black's reaction, and really was difficult for me find a good move for her. But surprisingly, she did bishop c5. This move, okay, I'm not really sure if she evaluated the tactical possibilities in relation with the capture of the knight with the knight on g7. But really, this move is quite good to prevent that because now, in case of the variant, the king can come to g6, and now the critical situation here is that the queen cannot come to e3 to continue with the attack because it's being covered by the bishop. So, well, uh, anticipating or not, bishop c5 is a move that is good in the positional point of view because follows the pattern about half the bishop to square away of the knight to control the knight joins. Okay, so sometimes it's possible to find a good move and do good move in a very natural way without too much calculations, probably. Okay, so well, this was a nice defense, and here for my next move, I spent uh, 16 minutes more or less, probably the half of my entire time, really very bad time management because in this moment I was a bit frustrated of the fact that I don't have a forced way to continue with the attack because I have the feeling like here I should have a tactical resource to finish the game, but later analyzing the position after we finished the game, really I saw that the position was still very balanced. I forgot to mention that the time control of this game was a rapid time control, 30 minutes plus 15 seconds of increment. So really, uh, you need a very good time management to avoid being under time trouble. So 16 minutes for only one move, no, is something too good. And I play 83. So imagine 60 minutes for this move, probably unexpected. I can imagine Rose's reaction at this moment. But yeah, here I was thinking in crazy stuff, because the sacrifice is possible if at the end of the variant the queen can use the e3 square. So I was considering b4 to deflect the bishop to do the sacrifice, later attract the king, and now queen e3 because the bishop now is controlling the square to try to get the invasion square on g5. But really, all this variant really is a silly variant for white because after b4, black can simply play bishop takes on f5, removing the main attacker of all the tactical ideas. So after bishop takes on f5, I have to recapture on f5, and black is winning a pawn. Okay. Also, I waste a lot of time considering things like, okay, just trying to be creative and thinking in hypothetical variants like bishop b6, for sure unnecessary because black can capture on f5 and that's all. But I was thinking on this before bishop b6, c4, and after bishop takes, now the variant works again because in this variant the bishop is still covering e3, but the queen can take the this invasion square because the bishop was deflect or deviate from the protection of this. So basically here I have the same Boden's mate pattern. Okay, but well, anything of this happens in the game, I play a3 just as a complement, to try to, for example, Uh, Waste of time, maybe b4, bishop d6, and c4, offering the pawn, looking for the same idea. Okay, but well, she did a5, prophylactic move, really to stop d4, and now here I come with a new idea. At this moment of the game, move number 14, I have like 5 minutes left, so I think I don't remember very well, but probably more or less. Now I start to think in the possibility to play h4 and h5 because if I manage to cover the g6 square, I can do the sacrifice. For example, h4, uh, I'm going to do a useless move, let's say fix the flank, h5, win more space, and now the sacrifice is possible because with the pawn on h5, the king cannot be moved forward to avoid the checkmate throw the dart squares. Okay, so really h4 is a nice way to to continue because y is creating a threat, control the g6 square. But now I think that Rose did one of the best moves in the game, 98, just on time to avoid those tactical possibilities and relocating the knight to try to challenge the outputs with pieces of the same value. Also making room for the pawn to enable the defense through the 7th rank and creating the strong pawn chain. So this move was quite good. In a first glance, looks a bit ugly because the pieces in the background is just connecting the rooks, but this is only something temporary. Okay, so h5 to be consistent with the plan. Now f6 reinforcing, and here bishop h3. Okay, this move is thematic because the bishop is going to be blocked forever due to the central pawn. So I am looking for an alternative way to develop the bishop. Also with the bishop on h3, the threat is knight h6 check, winning the bishop on e6. So Rose prevent that, playing queen f7, no pieces hanging, and now here king g2. The idea of king g2 is enable this square for the rook and looking for some rook maneuvers to try to mobilize new attackers on the king. Now she did 96, and yeah, as I repeat before, I was under time pressure, and here I almost moved my rook to the corner. Suddenly I noticed that this move really is a blunder because if I would play this move, she can sacrifice the knight on e4 and pin the queen. Um, this will be a winning variant. Okay, so I almost lose the game. Okay, in this moment, at the last moment, I noticed the tactical idea and I say, well, I have to trade knights. So knight takes e6, bishop takes, and in this moment of the game, my original intention was play bishop e3 to recover the control of this diagonal and to try to trade this bishop for this one later to play an endgame with a good bishop versus a bad one that is going to be blocked by the central pawn. So really this move is very natural, simple to connect the rooks and to complete the development and the opening phase and be ready to fight for the control of the open file. Really during the game, okay, I was suddenly I was a bit worried about something like this, like bishop takes, king takes, queen e7, to try to play bishop c5 and trade the bad bishop, probably with a balanced position. But really, this no is too simple because the queen have to take care of the light squares and also the 7 rank. So eventually, white can uh, create some counterplay with queen g4 or also looking for the invasion squares with the rook. So the queen on e7 is going to be a bit overloaded and really don't have good conditions to support the trade of the bad bishop for the good one. Okay, but well, really that was something that didn't happen in the game. I should play bishop d3. In my vision about this position during the game, I wanted to because I say well the bishop here potentially is participating in the attack on the king side and from the baseline. Really, I don't have to move the bishop to attack on the king side. The bishop move would be good just to connect the rooks and be able to fight for the control of the open file. But I was so focused on the king side attack that really I overvalue my chance in the flank, and Rose defend the position really very well. Rook h1. This is probably important in accuracy. I should play bishop d3, and now she retake immediately the control of this very important diagonal and of the file as well, because my rooks are disconnected. So now I did bishop f5, taking these outputs. So bishop takes, queen takes, rook fda, rook to the open file, makes sense. And now rook h4. Okay, at the moment, right now, the valuation of the position is more or less balanced. Okay, but with this move, I was taking some risks, also motivated by the fact that she started to be under time pressure as well. So in those moments, select tactical variance is something good to try to complicate the game, because really, for me, despite the engine says that this position is balanced, for me it was uncomfortable because my rooks were disconnected and I really didn't want to play bishop e3. So I went for the attack, trying to be consistent with the opening strategy. And here she did rook d6, defending through the 6 rank. Here the critical variant would be take the invasion square on d1, but I was looking for something like that, more or less, to try to deviate the pieces from the defense on the king side. But really, this is the most challenging variant for white. Okay, well, she did rook d6, rook g4, now king to the corner, out of the file and of the rook. Very good move. And at this moment, I noticed that really I don't have any way to continue putting more pressure on the king side, and the attack really don't have any future. For that reason, I did a6, knowing that the position is going to be close, but with the pawn here, I can create some potential back rank issues in the long term. So what's my unique hope? Now she did queen e6 to remove the queen of the pin. Probably would be better here, queen c4, more active, putting pressure on the pawn on c2. She did that later. So queen e6, rook to h4, and now the rook come back to cover the invasion square on d1. So this position right now is more or less balanced. So c4, attacking the pawn, and here I found this defense, rook d1. Uh, the idea is deflect the rook to capture the pawn on f6 and do the checkmate. So this is the advantage of those very advanced pawns that allows to create some checkmate patterns like background mates or keys of death mates on g7. So black cannot capture the rook. Now king g8. This was an amazing defense. During the game, I was expecting queen c2, and my idea against queen takes on c2 was bishop g5. That actually, I think is a yeah. I wanted to do this move because it's a very tricky move. Black cannot capture the rook, and the idea is just capture on f6. Here, the engine says that king g8 is still a good defense, but this position is very complex and difficult. I think the textual variant is much more solid. So as I was defending the position, I went for some simplifications. c3 to protect the c2 pawn, a4 fixing the flank, bishop e3 looking for more simplifications, and now rook d3. This is another important moment where I have to be very careful, because the natural move here will be queen e2, but queen e2 loses immediately after rook takes on g3, losing the queen. Okay, so king f1, rook g1. So queen e1 is more or less the unique move, really. Also, I remember during the game I considered take the invasion square, but in that variant, I should be able to sacrifice the pawn on e4 with check. So I didn't have enough time to calculate the consequence of that. For that reason, I went for the safest variant. So now king f7, okay, centralization of the king, rook c1. The defensive plan is do something like this and this to continue with more trades. During the game, I was worried about this g5, king g6, and king takes the pawn, because the pawn is overexpanded and cannot be reinforced by another pawn. And actually, right now, I can see that that was the engine suggestion, the plan. Looks like a very simple plan, but really is very, very effective. So, okay, b5, winning more space makes sense. And now finally, rook e2, queen b3. And here, the best defense is continue with the same idea, rook d2. Originally, I was thinking in rook e3, but the rook also have to protect the base on b2. For that reason, the correct way to offer more simplifications is rook d2. During the game, okay, I decided to play queen h1, looking for this diagonal to try to take some of the invasion squares and create some counterplay. Because if I manage to do some checks and capture this pawn, I can have some winning chance as well. But well, rook d1, okay, and here is attacking the queen, queen h3 and queen c4. Really, this rook don't have any good location because if I move the rook, let's say rook to e3, the queen can get the invasion square on f1, check, winning the queen, or check and followed by the mate on the corner. So I did rook e1, hoping to defect the rook, but well, at this moment of the game, we were playing with only few seconds on the clock, and I suppose that, yeah, she decides to accept the draw. Really, I did this move to deflect the rook and be able to get the invasion square finally with a perpetual chance. So this time, I managed to survive against. The game was very interesting and exciting with chance for both players. Also, well, I have to say, thanks to Rose for share the game and also for allow the analyze for the YouTube channel. I have so much respect for her and admiration. Probably in these 2 years that I have playing with her, I learned more chess than in the rest of my life because have to play against her motivate me to prepare the games, to try to investigate, do all the time new things, different openings. So have been an amazing experience, really. It's incredible. She have only 11 years old, and I am very sure that in the future we are going to hear a lot about her. Um so you can see all our games in the chess.com platform. And well, guys, I hope you enjoy the analyze and comments. Hope to see you in a new video for the channel. Bye.